Have you ever found yourself spending hours studying only to forget everything a few days later? Let me tell you something. When I started college, I was a total mess. My notes looked like a chaotic jumble of ideas, as if I had translated an ancient alien manuscript in a doctor's handwriting. I was frustrated, overwhelmed with things to study, and wondering if I would ever be able to keep up. After months of frustration, I realized that I needed to change my approach. So I started collecting every idea and method I had discovered about studying, noting down everything I discovered. I began to organize topics by color, noting key points in red and highlighting important information in yellow. My notes looked like a rainbow, but at least they were neat, and making concept maps that helped me not to get off course. But I still kept forgetting what I was studying after a short time. This was a big problem because we invest so much time and energy in studying that not remembering is frustrating. I was confused, so I Googled how to remember what you study, hoping for a miracle. But I was even more confused. Tired of the usual generic advice that has the usefulness of an umbrella in a hurricane, I looked deeper, not as deep. And I found 3 powerful techniques that helped me retain information longer in my mind and changed the way I study. I will rank them from least powerful to most powerful, taking into consideration effectiveness, applicability, and ease of use. This way, you will have a clear idea of what technique to adopt to maximize your learning. Let's start with the least powerful but still effective, the SQ3R technique. I know, it sounds like a code name, but it is just short for survey, question, read, recite, and review. The first step is to take a quick look at the material you need to study. This does not mean reading everything in detail, but rather taking an overview of the content. Think of this step as looking at a map before venturing into new territory. The second step is to turn headlines and subheadings into questions. This step is critical because it turns reading into a more active activity. If the title is photosynthesis, you might ask, how does photosynthesis work? What are the stages of photosynthesis? You are not just passively reading, but you are looking for answers. When you find the answer to your question, it's as if your brain clicks and fixes the information better. The third step is to read the text with the goal of answering the questions you asked yourself in the previous step. After that, close the book and summarize in words what you have just read.
Wow!
I put it last because each step takes time and is not suitable for all types of material. However, it is particularly effective for complex materials. Now we turn to the second strategy, Feynman's technique. The technique works like this. You take a topic, study it, and then explain it as if you were talking to a 6-year-old. Does it sound strange? Maybe. But that's where the trick is. When you try to simplify something and get stuck, that's when you realize you haven't really understood it. You go back and review the part you don't understand until you can explain it in a simple way. Repeat this process until you can make it flow smoothly. If you can explain it in a simple way, it means you have really internalized the concept. It also helps you remove irrelevant details by making you focus on the fundamental concepts that underlie any complex topic. Effective? Absolutely. Applicability? Well, not really for everything. Ease of use? I would say easy enough. Now we turn to the most powerful strategy, the spaced repetition. This strategy uses repetition of information at increasing intervals of time to counteract the natural tendency to forget. Spaced repetition is based on the forgetting curve, the first scientific theory describing the structure of remembering over time, compiled by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus. Basically, every time you study, your brain starts to forget the material. More precisely, after 20 minutes, we remember only 58% of what we have learned. After an hour, 44%, and after a day, about 33%. This is why cramming is so ineffective. Studying for 8 hours spread over 2 weeks generally results in higher performance than studying for 8 hours in one sitting. Let's take a practical example of how I apply this strategy. When I have finished studying the topic, that same day, I repeat it the first time. The next day, I repeat it again. The next repetition, I will do it 3 days later, then 7 days later, and so on. What happens is that every time we study, we forget most of it, but by repeating it over time, we consolidate the memory. In order not to forget when you have to repeat the subject, I recommend that you write down the date on an agenda or on an Excel sheet, so you are always organized. There is only one thing that separates those who study and forget from those who study and remember. The right approach. You have just discovered powerful strategies, but the real change begins when you decide to put them into practice.